Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 239 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and a two-time author. Our second book is called From Letters to Leaders, Redefining New Member Education and Leveraging Belonging to Eliminate Hazing. So go and pick up that book on Amazon today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring fraternity and sorority leaders together. Fun fact, today we're going to be talking about hazing prevention. And if any of our listeners know that there is hazing activity in your new member education program and you don't know what to do or what to replace it with, our book is going to give you all the tools you need to make those changes in your chapter. Start by having a conversation one-on-one with another member about the concerns that you have. So that might be over breakfast, that might be over lunch, over a cup of coffee, whatever. And essentially start by having that conversation one-on-one, get them to agree to making those changes with you, and then back you up at the chapter meeting when you suggest some replacement activities that aren't hazing activities. And if you have enough allies built up before the meeting, you're going to repeat that process with several members, then they're all going to back you up in the changes that you are going to make in your chapter. And all of that is because of careful planning, not just some chance arrival at your meeting. So I want you to think ahead of time of how you're going to build allies before you even bring it up. Now, our next guest is Sydney Newby. She is a Bowling Green State University sorority member who was honored with the first Stone Foltz Memorial Award for taking action against Greek life hazing. So Fultz was pledging Pi Kappa Alpha. He was just 20 years old. And Sydney says that this is a loss that she never wants to see happen again. And she's taking it upon herself to educate sorority members on campus. Here's the quote from Sydney. She said, "I put in the new parts of the bylaws for the College Panhellenic Conference of Hazing Prevention workshops and Bystander Intervention workshops to be put on. Then I put that on last year with the focus on how hazing appears differently in fraternities and sororities." So this has just blew me away when I read this newspaper article. And I just love it when students start these peer-to-peer education programs on their campus to make their campus safer. And Sydney's story was the absolute perfect fit for our listeners. So that way they can figure out how to duplicate these efforts on campuses all over the country. Welcome to the show, Sydney.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh my God, what a pleasure. I am so excited. Anytime I see a student like you, I just want to magnify what you're doing and just make sure that everybody on the planet knows about it, because boy, oh boy, I mean, it's just, it just makes me feel good. It makes me feel like, the future of fraternity and sorority is safe as long as students like you are around. And for me, it's so important for my kids. I have a son who's 17. I have a daughter who's 15. They're going to be fraternity president, sorority president, right? They've been around fraternity and sorority their whole lives. I took them to fraternity conventions as a baby. So they've known the creed of my fraternity since they were like 10, okay? And so I know they're going to be Greek. And it gives me hope when students like you take an active role in making your campus safer and making the fraternity and sorority experience safer, because then I know that my kids are going to get the same great experience that we've had. So I'm so excited that you're on the show. Now, I want to make sure our listeners know a little bit more about you and your background. So you decided on Bowling Green State University, which is in Toledo, Ohio, for your undergraduate experience. And so I'm wondering, why did you choose Bowling Green of all places?
So I'm originally from Michigan, about 45 minutes north of Detroit. For Bowling Green, I just really wanted a change in my college experience. I went to the same school, K through 12, private small school, my whole life, and I just kind of wanted to break out of my little small town, go somewhere new where I was able to get those new experiences different from what I had had in the past. So ultimately, I chose Bowling Green just because it sounds so cliche, but like when I stepped foot on their campus, it felt like home to me.
Yeah, I've heard that quite a bit from a lot of our
Yeah.
different guests. They talk about the first time they stepped on campus and it was like the weather was perfect, the birds were chirping, like just everything seemed in like perfect place. And they just knew when they walked on that this was the right place for them. So
Yeah.
sounds like that's exactly your experience. And
Yes,
then, of
definitely.
course, you joined Sigma Kappa, which is awesome. So, what was special about these sisters at Sigma Kappa that made you want to join them?
Yeah. So I went through recruitment my first semester. I ultimately I did go to Bowling Green because I wanted to break out of my shell, but the negative part of that was that I then didn't know anyone on campus. So I did just want to meet new people and stuff. So going through recruitment, I chose to join Sigma Kappa just because I could really see myself in their sisterhood, like picture myself there. I made really good connections with the girls throughout recruitment. And it just seemed again, like my home, like my place to be.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, ultimately, that's what we want. We want all of the men and the women to find the right fraternity or sorority for them. Wherever
Mhm.
you go Greek, to me, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm just happy that you're a member of the fraternity and sorority system. And I think there's a home for everybody, no matter who you are on campus. And so I think our job as fraternity and sorority leaders is just to make sure that everybody finds the right place for them. That might be in your organization or it might be in another organization on campus. Either way is cool with me as long as you're a part of the community, right?
Yes, yes. I know last year serving on the College Panhellenic executive board, I really got close with everyone from different chapters. Like I have some of my best friends are in different chapters, but we're all still part of that same community, which has ultimately brought us together.
Yeah, that's so cool. And you're absolutely right. I mean, some of my best friends are in members of other fraternities, other sororities. Many of them have worked for their national headquarters or have served on the board of directors for their fraternity or sorority. But these are some of my best friends. And so I think as long as you're in the community, that gives you opportunities to meet other people that maybe are in another organization. So definitely, I agree with you. You want to take advantage of all the networking opportunities that you have, not just in your own organization, Sigma Kappa, but in the other sororities and the other fraternities that are on campus, because that ultimately is going to help you to build out that network and make sure that you're super successful after you graduate and you get that certificate on the wall saying that you're now a
Mhm.
college grad, right? So yeah, hopefully people will start to build those connections, not only in your own chapter, not only in your own council, but in other councils as well. Reach out to NPHC and find out
Yes.
what's going on over there. I mean, the more you know, the more people you know, I think the better you're going to be. You're going to learn about other cultures and your
Mhm.
network is bigger. This is
Yeah.
so important. So I love all of that. Now let's talk. Stone Foltz, he was a Bowling Green student. He passed away on March 7th, 2021, a little over a year ago, as a result of hazing. And March 7th and the days that were leading up to it, these are all memories that are going to be forever be etched in your brain. So, what was going through your head after the news came out on campus?
Yeah. So March 7th, I believe it was a Sunday. Um, which is when Stone passed away. Everything that had happened with him happened Thursday night. So it kind of broke on campus Friday throughout the day. I remember getting a text from my president of the College Panhellenic Conference of Panhell saying, hey, we need to have emergency executive board meeting today sometime. And I was at work all day. So I had texted her and been like, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it to this. Can you just text me what's going on? And she texted me and she said, um, there's a Pi Kappa Alpha new member in the hospital right now. The new There was a lot of misinformation. The first report I heard was that he was brain dead. Um, just kind of we need to prepare for what's going to happen. The first thought that went through my mind was, well, he's still alive right now. I don't care if Greek life gets shut down if this kid can live. His life, as much as I love my sorority, someone's life is more important than that, I think. So that's just went through my mind. I remember getting into my car after work and just sobbing. Like, it's the kind of thing that you hear about on the news, but you never think is going to happen on your campus until it actually does. And so it was pretty much 3 days of just waiting. On Sunday, it came out that he did pass away from, and all of his organs did get donated. It was 3 days of waiting, 3 days of being in meetings with the university, with our fraternity and sorority life office, with the university president, saying what are our next steps here. Ultimately, Greek life did get shut down for about a month or so, so everyone can recover. But overall, just a very emotionally draining time that like I will never forget.
Oh my gosh. That is just, it's so hard to listen to. I think for you to narrate that story and for you to talk about, the sobbing in your car and what, the students were thinking and all of the misinformation that was going on. I can only imagine just how confusing and how sad, and, just putting everything into perspective about what's really important,
Yeah.
And so I thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's really, really important. And then, I mean, you had more tragedy in your own family. Following this was really the worst time of your life. Your Nana passed away in May, and then your grandpa passed away in July. I'm just wondering, how are you able to get past the pain there and then come back to school in August ready to make a difference?
Yeah. So definitely a rough couple of months last year. Coming back to school, it was hard, but I was almost like comforted knowing that I do have my biggest support system here, like within Greek life, from girls in my chapter, from girls in other chapters, who I met through Pan. So it was almost comforting that I was able to like now be around them and stuff. And ultimately, like, I knew that what happened had made me upset, especially like everything that had happened with Stone Foltz. And I did not want anyone to like have to feel like that again. So I kind of took it upon myself to like work towards making that change.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm so glad that you had the support of your sorority sisters and even sisters in other organizations when you're going through a tough time with your family. I remember my grandfather also, passed away when I was in college, and I remember how hard that was. Luckily, I had spent some time with him a couple of weeks prior, and so I got to be with him in person and tell him, how much I loved him. But my fraternity brothers were there for me,
Mhm.
and I never forgot that. It was just them checking in on me and saying, "Hey, are you okay? Do you want to go out and get something to eat? Do you want to go to the gym with me?" Just trying to like engage to make sure that I stayed engaged and in somewhat of a normal routine, even though they knew that I was hurting inside.
Mhm.
And so, I'll never forget that. And so I'm glad that everybody's there for you and you have that support system. And I think it's great that you started to shift to say, okay, how do we make sure now that, we don't repeat what happened with Stone in the future, and make this place a safer place, so to make sure that nobody else feels that kind of grief again,
Mhm.
on campus, and that it's a safe place, right?
Yes.
So now you're, as VP of standards for Pan Hell at the time, you put on these workshops for how hazing appears differently in sororities, how to use bystander intervention to stop hazing, along with some of the common practices that are seen with college women. So, you started talking about things like domestic violence, for example. So talk to us a little bit about some of these workshops that you put on, and how have they helped the community in general?
Yeah. So the first one I put on was how hazing appears differently in sorority women, as opposed to fraternity men. Just because a lot of what you see on the media, a lot of the general education we get about it is more geared to how hazing normally, like typically shows up in fraternities. Your forced drinking, binge drinking, stuff like that. is more geared toward fraternities. It does, of course, happen with sororities, but it's not as common. More of the hazing you see within sororities is your mean girl behavior, like girls telling you you have to wear a certain thing, you have to lose weight, like developing eating disorders such as that. So I did a lot of education on that within our sorority community at Bowling Green, and I got a lot of good feedback from it, from women in sororities, just because it was something geared towards them and something specific towards them, and not just general that they were being forced to go through the university. It was something that they can actually use within their own chapters and within their everyday lives. The other workshop I focused on was Bystander Intervention. So everyone in fraternity and sorority life at Bowling Green had to go to Bystander Intervention workshops, like through the university. So those were geared towards how to use bystander intervention towards hazing. So in my workshop, I did touch on hazing, but I was like, okay, we all went through this workshop. We all learned how to use this towards hazing. Let's take these skills that can be used for hazing and see how we can apply them to other situations as well that we see commonly as college-aged women. So we focused on, like, if you see like a sister or friend who has an eating disorder, who has been sexually assaulted, is in a like abusive relationship, stuff like that. So how to use the bystander intervention techniques that we learned in hazing prevention workshops and also apply them to these other situations as well.
Wow, that is just amazing. I hope that all of our listeners are getting some ideas from, what it is that you put together, because man, oh man, you are just a diamond. I mean, I absolutely love the work that you're doing. I think it's fantastic. And for you to come up with all of that, and put it all together and organize it, and make sure students are going through. I mean, boy, oh boy, that's a wonderful thing for you, and something that I hope you talk about in every job interview you ever have. Because if you told me that and I'm sitting across the table as the CEO of the company, you're hired, because you're doing a great job. That's so great. And you know what? You were awarded. You were presented with the first Stone Foltz Community of Care Award by the FSL office at Bowling Green in March, so last month. What did that moment feel like to you when you got that award?
Yeah, it definitely was almost like kind of like bittersweet. Like, it did bring up memories of like everything happened with Stone and stuff, and it was awful that something like that had to happen for us to implement these types of workshops, for these to like actually be put in place. But like on the flip side of that, I did put a lot of work into these workshops, and I got a lot of good feedback from the community, and they did actually help girls within our Panhellenic community. So it is amazing for that to be recognized, but it is not so amazing that something so tragic had to happen for these to be put in place.
Yeah, I definitely get that frustration. I totally understand it. I mean, in your opinion, I'm going to ask you a really deep question, but in your opinion, when will hazing end?
I don't think it will ever fully end. Because it's not only something you see in fraternity and sorority life, it's something you see in club sports, in marching band, in all different types of student organizations. And a lot of the education is geared towards fraternity and sorority members. So even if it ends in fraternity and sororities, which I don't think it will, I think it will still exist in other forms, in other organizations. I think we can definitely lessen it. And the way we can work towards that is towards more education on it, on the issues. But I just think it's one of those things that will always unfortunately be around.
Yeah. I agree that I think there is a certain human component to it, that we see it across various platforms. You're right. We see it in athletics. We see it in the band. we see it in the military. So we see it all over, right? So that tells us that this is not just confined to fraternity and sorority systems. There's something about human nature that we have to investigate. Why are we abusing newcomers into our organizations, right? But I do think that, number one, I think the students need to feel a certain sense of responsibility that they themselves need to report it and fix it, right?
Yes,
Because,
something, oh,
go ahead.
sorry.
Yeah.
Something we talked a lot about within our Panhellenic community last year is the idea of report and unsupport. Because as sorority women, you have a lot of power. Fraternity men want you at their parties, they want you at their date parties, they want you to go to their formal. So if you report their hazing to the university, but then you go to date party with them the next weekend, it shows that you're not really that serious about the issues. But if you report them and then you stop showing up to their events, you stop going to their parties, and suddenly they realize that there are no sorority women supporting them anymore, they are going to change. And that's like the power we hold as sorority women.
Wow, you are dropping bombs right now. Like, you know what you're talking about, because you're right. I think, the sorority community, they do hold a lot of power. And if they just knew how much power they have to change bad behavior on college campuses, then I think we could really get somewhere, because you're right. They want you and your sorority to come to their parties, to come to their formals, to come to their social events. And if you have an objection with the way that they are conducting themselves, then guess what? They're going to suddenly change the way that they're operating, or else. And so I agree with you 100%. I think, unsupported, and report. I love that. I think that's fantastic. I think, the university, everyone needs to feel comfortable to come forward with this information. So that's number two, right?
Yes.
Do students feel comfortable coming forward with this information? Yes or no? And then number three, it does the university and or your fraternity or sorority headquarters, are they trained on what to do when they get the report? So
Yes.
if we
And
have those three pieces, I think we can end hazing.
yes. And how do students know how to report it?
Right.
Because BGSU is big that they have a 24-hour, like you can call it any time of the day, hazing hotline. But it's something they've always had, but just started talking about after everything that happened with Stone. So like, are students knowing how to report these incidents as well?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fantastic. Now, obviously, social media is big right now. I mean, we've got a big social media following on TikTok now. It seems like a lot of students are there. Instagram is still certainly, a piece of all of this. How can we leverage social media in our fight to end hazing? Because I know during the pandemic, for example, there was higher consumption of alcohol among fraternity members. There was a more pro-hazing attitude among fraternity members during the pandemic with all the isolation and everything that was going on. So how do we leverage social media to help us in this fight?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with hazing prevention is more education on the issue. And a good way to do that is through social media, because it's something people are constantly using, they're constantly on. So if we use social media more for education about hazing, because a majority of people don't realize they were hazed until after the situation's already done. So if we spread more of that education through things such as social media, then they're able to realize it as it's happening and help to put a stop to that.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Now, let's assume that somebody's listening right now and they know that hazing is happening in their chapter. I think the odds of that are very, very high. Okay. So, what are some replacement activities that students can use if they know that there's hazing happening in their chapter?
Yeah. So if there's hazing happening in your chapter, like if you're a new member or stuff, just any type of member in your chapter, I would start by like talking to other chapter members, seeing if they've experienced anything similar, and then definitely report it to either your university or through your national headquarters. And then some like replacement activities, really just like hanging out with like your sisters or brothers, like watching a movie, going out to dinner, like just something like that where you can just kind of relax and it's not dangerous.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I mean, I think that, I start thinking about what's more important, right? Is it the pledge class unity or is it the chapter unity? And the answer I always come back to is the chapter unity. Like, are we doing things to develop our sisterhood? Are we doing things
Yes.
to develop our brotherhood? I think all too often when we look at hazing culture, it's all about how unified the pledge class is. But I'm like, what's really important? I mean, if you have a unified pledge class, then that means they're probably not interacting very well with the other members of the
Yes.
organization. So now you have 4 cliques in your chapter and you are not an effective chapter. I'm sorry.
Yes.
If there are 4 cliques, you're not effective. Am I right?
Yes. No, I completely agree.
Yeah. So I think you're right. I think the question is, how do we increase the brotherhood? How do we increase the sisterhood and just have fun events that the entire chapter is participating in? And maybe it's, I don't know, shadowing your exec board members to figure out how they do their job. Like that is something that might be difficult, like actually learning the job from the treasurer. There's some work involved there, I promise you.
Yeah.
Right. But, so that's not easy. But will that new member be more prepared to take the job when that treasurer graduates? You bet. You
Yes.
bet. So, I think it's, the question is, how can we be, having activities that are actually beneficial and actually makes this person a better brother or a better sister and it's productive as opposed to something that's going to waste their time or embarrass them.
Yes. I agree 100%.
Yeah. All right. That's really good. I like that a lot. So, all right. So what other steps should fraternity and sorority members take if they see hazing in their own organization, or maybe they see hazing in another organization on campus? Is there anything else that they should think about?
Definitely, we touched on it before, report and unsupport is the big thing I like to preach.
Yeah.
Report it to your university, report it to your national headquarters. Ultimately, it is like some people like are scared to report, like, oh my gosh, if I report this, is the whole FSL community gonna hate me now? Like, am I going to be like blacklisted? But no, people would rather like be alive, have their siblings be safe than you like hear about this and not report it.
Yeah. I'm going to use that in the future. Report and unsupport, man. I love it. I think it's genius. I mean, I absolutely think it's genius. So thank you for that. See, I learned something. I learned something in every episode of the Fraternity Foodie podcast. That's what I learned there. That's something that I'm going to spread all over the country because I think you're absolutely right. It's not enough to just report. It's about unsupporting a group that's doing something that is harmful to another student on our campus and harmful to the fraternity and sorority community as a whole, right? I mean,
Yes.
that clearly what happened to Stone obviously impacted the entire community, right?
Yes, definitely.
It's not just the men of Pi Kappa Alpha. It's every fraternity, it's every sorority is impacted by this.
Yes.
And I think we need to start understanding the ripple effect that has on Stone's parents, on his friends, his fraternity brothers, the entire Greek community, the Bowling Green community in Toledo, Ohio. I mean, it impacts everything.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Well, listen, I really appreciate you spending time today. I really believe that other students who are listening are going to be really motivated and inspired by your story. So I'm super happy to share it. And I think you have so much to be proud of. I know your Sigma Kappa sisters are really proud of what you've done here, Sydney. And I'm a big fan of yours.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, we do love good food here at the Fraternity Foodie podcast. And so I do want to, occasionally I will get to the Toledo, Ohio area. I'm not always there, but Ohio has a lot of universities around,
Yes.
a lot of big Greek systems, right? We both know that. So what's your favorite restaurant near Bowling Green's campus?
So Bowling Green staple is Campus Poly Eyes. So it's a pizza place, but they are famous for their stuffed breadsticks. They're so good. They're like ginormous. You can get them stuffed with anything you want. They are like a fan favorite around here.
That sounds absolutely amazing. So definitely, I'm going to go check that out the next time I'm
Yes.
in town. I absolutely promise. So if our listeners, maybe they want to follow you on social media and just keep up with some of the things that you're up to, where can they go to follow you?
Yeah. So Instagram is definitely the social media I'm most active on, and it's just my name. So just at Sydney Newby.
Perfect. At Sydney Newby, Newby. Sydney, I really appreciate you being here. You are just a shining star for the Bowling Green State University community. I know the Fraternity and Sorority Life Office feels the same way. Obviously, they gave you that award. Boy, oh boy, I mean, you have just an amazing life and career ahead of you. You know, document everything that you've done, show the award, talk about, the programs that you implemented on campus. And I promise you that anybody in a job interview going forward is going to say Sydney is the person that we want.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And, I really enjoyed this. To our listeners, we hope that you enjoyed this talk with Sydney. Please like it and please share it with other sorority members on campus, other fraternity members on campus. It's really important that Sydney's words get out to the masses. So please share it. And we hope to see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.